Let me tell you about the time I started building my own coaching business. One of my biggest struggles back then was knowing that I could generate some real results for my clients, but still having to go out there and convince new clients to work with me all over again. It sucked, to say the least. And today, I know that there's so many people struggling with the same problem, especially when you're just starting out for yourself. How do you get noticed or earn respect in your field? And in this video, we'll dive into the strategies that make all the difference. Because over the last years, I've been analyzing countless resources and industry insights. And what I distilled is a 6-step formula to build a powerful personal brand. Let's start. The first step is to know and act according to your core values. So as the world gets more complicated, there's this huge desire in people to do the right thing. And this desire gets more and more transferred to brands. In fact, according to a 2018 study by Accenture, 63% of global consumers prefer to purchase from companies that resonate with their personal values and beliefs. But there's a fine line between standing for something and becoming what I call a brand chameleon. So a brand chameleon is someone who superficially aligns with a cause without genuine commitment. And so they shift colors trying to fit in, often losing their own identity along the process. I remember when I was just starting out, I was collaborating with a consultant who preached about protecting Mother Earth. And at one point, I remember we had to go and see a client and she would pick me up in a Porsche. I mean, the disconnect was just so jarring, not only for me, but also for the client we were working with. And don't get me wrong, this is not about showing up and being perfect all the time, but there needs to be an alignment with your message. Being a brand chameleon might bring you short-term attention, but people can smell when it's a front. And while we're at it, hit the like button if you value genuine brands over brand chameleons. So while we build our brands, we should always be honest and ask ourselves, is this something that I genuinely care about, or am I just maybe riding a wave here? The second step is to understand personality in personal branding. So another thing that I found that is a real game changer for a lot of people is realizing that personal branding isn't just about looking great online. You can have the most beautiful, most polished website and still fail to connect to your audience. And there's this tool that I like to use a lot in my work. It's this concept of brand archetypes. Brand archetypes or archetypes are personality patterns every one of us inherently knows and recognizes. They're rooted in Jungian psychology, and by understanding and leveraging your archetype, you can communicate with your audience on a much deeper level. But most importantly, especially when you're building your personal brand, these are not arbitrary. If you've been around the channel, you've probably heard me mention the similarity attraction paradigm. It's a principle that suggests that individuals naturally lean towards what's familiar and aligns with their core beliefs. So let's imagine for a moment that you are this leadership coach and you pride yourself on creative and dynamic group exercises. However, when you arrive at your client's site for a workshop, you're met with this restrictive classroom environment without any room for movement. This is when you can surely say that something's got lost in your message. Because especially when you're a one-man or a one-woman show, your goal is to attract clients who share or harmonize with your archetype. And of course, while we're at it, if you want to learn more about the concept of brand archetypes, there's a full playlist linked in this corner right here. And so the kicker is, when you choose to show up with intention, reflecting your brand archetype, you're not just gaining followers, you're attracting clients who actually resonate with your style. So the question you want to keep asking yourself here is, am I presenting myself in a way that attracts those who share my values and goals? Which brings me to our next step, know and serve your audience. So now we talked about knowing yourself, but you also have to invest into knowing your audience. Most of us start by analyzing our audience's demographics, but what you really want to dive into is their psychographics. So this isn't only about knowing their age, location, or profession. It's delving deeper into their values, beliefs, aspirations, and desires. Imagine crafting content for millennials in New York. Knowing they're tech-savvy urbanites is kind of surface level. But when you understand that they value experiences over possessions, crave deep and meaningful connections, and are constantly seeking for ways to balance work and personal well-being, that's when you're playing a whole different game. And so the question is now, how can your brand become part in solving their challenges? Which brings me to our next step. So you know and act according to your core values. Remember, you don't want to be a brand chameleon. You understand what it means to bring your brand personality to the table, and you understand how to best serve your audience and future clients. Now it's time to become consistent. So while most people get really excited about starting their personal brand, it sometimes can become really tough to keep up the momentum. You see a gazillion platforms, endless content strategies, and it might seem tempting to be everywhere. But spreading yourself thin over all these platforms is a one-way ticket to Burnout City. Instead, and especially in the beginning, this is really about being on one or two platforms that really matter to your brand. And here's the kicker. Consistency isn't only about frequency, especially in the beginning when you're just figuring out the whole content game and you may not have as many resources at your hand. You want to firstly focus on consistently sharing a message that's rooted in your mission and that you believe in. Which brings me to our next step. Focus on quality, not quantity. There's this common misbelief that if you just produce more, work nonstop, and publish every day, you're doing things right. And while I believe it's a great idea to publish a lot at the beginning, especially to get over that perfectionist mindset, it's also good to pause once in a while and check if you're still adding value. So a while back, I was working with a nutritionist who created recipes to build an audience. And in her initial months, she created a new recipe every day to catch as many eyes as possible. But over time, she realized that while her recipe count went up, her follower count just didn't. So we decided to change tactics, and instead of daily posts, she began to craft one deeply researched and beautifully shot recipe per week, weaving in stories of her grandmother's kitchen or the history of a particular dish. And this is when people not only came back, but they also started to share her posts. So it was never about the sheer number of recipes. It was about the heart and soul she poured into each one of them. So your task is to find out what makes your content special and double down on that. Because a strong personal brand is not only about being seen, it's about being memorable. Which brings me to our next step, closing the gap. So here goes the truth bomb. Every one of us at our core has a vision of this version we're trying to become. But there's often a canyon between that vision and where we stand today. I remember when I started with video marketing for my coaching business, my heart was racing every time I hit that publish button. Those videos were surely no award winners, and even with the videos today, I'm aware that there's so much more growth potential. So whether you have to become a better speaker, writer, listener, or storyteller, start to hunt down mentors, tackle every obstacle head on, and embrace every failure. Because personal branding at its core is more than just promoting a business. It's a journey to improve and commit to that version you want to become. And of course, if you are into starting your personal brand journey today, there's a full playlist waiting for you right here. Till then, I'll catch you guys next time. Take care. Bye.